Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Bikini in the Brain. Of course, I'm here with the lovely and pink Ashley Cutwasser.
Hello, everyone. It's so good to have you all join here today. We appreciate your viewership.
Yeah, and today I think it's a perfect time for the topic we have today, which is the vicious diet cycle and how to avoid it. What to do in particular with when you eat a little bit too much or go off your diet, like what do you do the next day? Do you compensate for it? What do you do? So I think jumping right into that, especially with the time of the year, after Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, this is when a lot of those things happen. So I think, how do we address it? How do we avoid that? Not just the eating, but what do you do when you do it? Because most of us are going to probably do it a little bit.
Oh, most of us. I think we've all kind of went a little overboard on our treat meals. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever met someone that hasn't. And if they haven't, I think they're lying.
Yeah.
Because I think, it's a very, very, very common occurrence here in this industry. And the reason for that is obviously we have to restrict certain foods, our calories. We might experience hunger more than the average person, cravings, of course. So that can all lead to an urge to overindulge.
Yeah, for sure. And I think just the keeping the diet so strict all year long just kind of promotes that too. And you see that in other sports too, which is, it's kind of fun because I see other sports, like I watch a lot of other sports and I see the same kind of problems you see these like MMA fighters have too with as bodybuilders. You see them trying to make weight, and then they blow up in the off season, and some are really good about it. And they're just like, oh, I keep it good. And then some are really, really bad about it. And it's kind of the same things in other sports too. And you see it with the boxers, you see it with all these different sports. And it's like, man, it's just anyone who's constantly keeping their weight down, right? Constantly keeping that shape is going to run into these kind of problems. So it's good to see it just for you guys that are watching it, that it's not just you guys, like everyone goes through these things,
Yeah,
absolutely. Even this guys like the strongest, toughest guys mindset wise, like that you think to be out there, but everyone kind of goes through it. So.
Yeah. And, I think first and foremost, a good, I guess, tip when you feel like you might overindulge, like let's say your coach allows you a cheat meal, allows you a treat meal, because maybe you're experiencing a lot of hunger lately and cravings. Before having that treat meal, just make sure you're very well hydrated first and foremost, because I feel like sometimes when we're not drinking enough water, we can even just get extra like space in your stomach, even just from it being empty with fluids too. So that can cause a little bit of overindulgence, and just enjoying the moment when you do have your treat meal, right? Because it shouldn't be, if it's something that you've been looking forward to, or you're celebrating with some friends and family for a special event, just like kind of be in the moment, enjoy, go slow, because I always say your stomach gets satisfied before your taste buds do, meaning you could be pretty full and then you still want to eat more because it tastes so good, or maybe it's a food you haven't had in a long time, or dessert, the dessert trays coming by. So just be intentional when you indulge in your treat meal. And I think you can still make some pretty good choices even when you are having a celebratory meal or whatnot. Keep it still reasonable. You can't be doing cheat meals of just milkshakes and cupcakes, because you're definitely going to overindulge in that, because it will leave you hungrier even after you have it all.
Yeah. I think one of the things you nailed on the head was the water, and having just proper hydration. And if you're not a water drinker, I use the Mio water flavoring. It's probably not the best thing, but hey, it gets me to drink my water. So it's better than the alternative of just not drinking enough water. But most people are dehydrated. It's actually not just like some people like, 10%. It's like most people are dehydrated. Isn't that crazy? Like more than half people are somewhat dehydrated. Like we're not hydrated as much as we should be. It's a wild stat, but it's a true stat. And so it doesn't mean that, you feel it and you're in the desert and you're, like we feel that type of dehydration, but you're just not properly hydrated. You're not hydrated how you should be. Right. So that's a big part of hunger. Are you actually hunger? Or are you just a little dehydrated? So having your water, I always recommend 1 ounce per pound of body weight per day, or 2.2 ounces per kilo for our overseas listeners. But so make sure that you're getting that in, and not to confuse the two. So one of the good tricks that I've heard other nutritionists kind of mention was, have 16 ounces of water before you have your meal. And then that'll help you with the volume, like you said. So yes, definitely a common thing that a lot of people don't pick up on. They don't really realize that. So, and then as far as the other things that you were mentioning there, which was, not overindulging. And what I find is a good way to get through the holidays and get through these things is just to have kind of a calorie limit for the day.
Yeah.
And so so if you have like let's say a lower protein day, it's not going to kill you to have like one lower protein day. To offset it, maybe have some amino acids in the morning, amino acids at night, if you're not going to get enough protein. And then just look at your menu plan. Let's say your menu plan is like 2,000 calories a day. Maybe add an additional 1,000 calories that day on whatever, it's Christmas or Thanksgiving or whatever. And then just eat that many calories. Whatever they come from. Have your amino acids, maybe have a protein shake. You're going to get some protein in with the meal no matter what. And just kind of, call that day like a break even day or a wash, and have a little bit of extra calories and have fun and enjoy the day, like you said. So if an extra 1,000 calories like ruins your whole prep, and then you weren't going to be ready for the show anyway. It's just 1,000 calories. It shouldn't derail anything. So that's a good way of doing it. And then you don't feel like you're, sacrificing so much. 3,000 calories from whatever food you want to eat in a day I think is pretty realistic for someone to be like, okay, I'm satiated with that. Because for me, I mean, maybe it's case by case, but for me, when I have just like one donut, I'm like, that's cool for the week for me. Like I did my thing this week, and it's 500 calories for a crazy donut. So you just got to set your standards to be realistic, like you said too, though. Yeah. Like okay, Adam, you're not doing an hour of cardio every day, and you're not eating 1,200 calories. You can get away with X. So there you go.
Yeah. Absolutely. And also be careful as you do have your celebration meal or whatever. I'm not a fan of like fasting or starving yourself beforehand, because what's going to happen is you're going to get hungrier and hungrier, and you're just going to go all in when you can have it. So if it were me, I personally like to keep my meals like light. I like to call more like base meals. I do up until my cheat meal, meaning I would have like chicken veg or something like that, meaning a protein and a vegetable. So that means there's not really any fat or carbs with it, not too much anyway. So it kind of keeps me full. It keeps me satiated enough to where I'm still a little bit hungry when it comes to dinner time, but not to the point where I'm like, oh, I'm just going to have this whole platter here. So that is something that you can do to kind of help, I guess, control your appetite there. But I will say, if you want to do a little bit of correcting after going overboard, you could do that, I suppose. And you would just kind of do it with just those base meals, meaning I would, like, if I feel like I had maybe a little too many calories in this particular treat meal, I will perhaps the next day not cut back on food necessarily, but again, eliminating a lot of those carbs and fats, because to me, the protein will be the most beneficial, most important, and it will keep me full. And with those vegetables, I don't feel like I'm starving again, but I am not having that extra calories with it.
Yeah, no, that's what I generally will recommend too. And for you that are following your menu plan, that are really strict on your menu plan, I think awesome. Keep to it. I think that's a great mindset to have. But if you are, we have talked many times about like, don't be, over the top about it. Don't be crazy over the top about it. If you eat your menu, if it's a 6 menu plan, 6 meals on a menu plan, and you eat that all in 2 meals versus 6 that day, that's not a problem. So if your meals are spaced out, and let's say you're in your off season, you have a carb and a fat in like every meal, because you have high calories at this point, and you're going into, let's say, a Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner or something like that, it's okay to do exactly what Ashley said, where you just do the protein from those meals and those first few meals, and then you're just adding those carbs and fats to your later meal. That's okay too. And I tell a lot of people, I don't care how you eat the menu plan. The only thing I'm really concerned with is that nutrition around the workout time. That is important, but the rest of the time, it really doesn't matter whether you eat it in 2 meals or you eat it in 15 meals. There's very little difference in the results. They've tested this. So yeah, if you want to have one big meal, not have any of your carbs in your first meals through 1 through 3 and have them all at night and enjoy it with your family or whatever, then yeah, go for it. There's not going to be any issues with that. It won't make any change to your progress. So yeah, be good to go. And then one of the things I think that we should also talk about too is like, okay, that was the plan, right? The plan was to go in and and do exactly that and be on my menu plan and eat 3,000 calories. What happens if I ate, 5,000, 6,000,
Yeah.
What do I do then? I think that's the big one because it happens often, guys.
It does.
It's, don't feel guilty. Like you're not the only one. Coach Adam's done it too. When I was competing, I did it so bad once that I was like ashamed of myself. I was like, how did I even physically eat that much food? And I did it after a show and I was younger. I was young and stupid. And I did it. And I ate so much. And then what's funny is it's so crazy how much I ate. But after the show, I was like, all I wanted was a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So I had like 2 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches waiting for me after the show. And then I was like, I ate one backstage. I was like, you know what I want instead? I want a Chipotle burrito actually. So I'll just do one of those and not eat the other sandwich. So then I went to Chipotle, ate the burrito. Then all of a sudden everything just kicked in, the hunger. Then I was like, oh, I'll order the guac and chips. And then I still ate my peanut butter jelly sandwich. Like while I was eating all this is all within like an hour after the show. And then I was so full that I ended up like having to pull over. I threw up, right? Which is like, I just couldn't keep it in. And I finally made it home, which was like an hour later. And then I ate again and I just like ate everything. So like, I get it, guys. Like I can't even, I got done. I was like, what just happened? Like, how did I physically eat that much food? Like it was so much. So I get it. And I kind of laughed it off and it was like super watery and bloated. It looked like I lost everything in the day, but you wake up, you're like, what did you do to yourself? Right. So the thing is, when you when you do too much like that and you eat too much, one of the important things is to, what do you do the next few days, right? You have tips on that. I'll let you take that.
Yes. Well, first for your mindset, just don't panic. Okay. And just like you said, it happens to everyone, including Adam, including me. Of course, it happened to me too. It will happen to you if it hasn't already. So be prepared. Don't feel ashamed of yourself. The thing is knowing this is going to happen is different from like letting it happen. Meaning it's not, you have to kind of look at it like, okay, it happened. What's done is done. Let's move forward. I don't want people really stressing out about it, for too long. I think it's important to kind of recognize that feeling of guilt though. Like, remember this feeling of guilt, how you felt after you did this, right? Like, oh my gosh, I feel like I just ruined 2 weeks of progress. I feel like I just let myself down. I feel like I ruined hard work. Whatever feeling you're having, these thoughts in your head, sit with it and remember how you feel, okay? Because when you get presented the same scenario later down the road, which you will, remember how you feel now. With that being said, I don't want you to feel bad too long, okay? So you got to move forward, move on. Today is a new day. What's done is done. It's in the past. Let's start fresh, okay? So when we start fresh, just let it go. Let it go, all right? I don't like to see people trying to neutralize their excess calories with cardio, though. I think that creates a yo-yo effect. And it's like a back and forth, it's going to happen again. If this does happen to you, you overate your treat meal, just chalk it as a loss. All right. This day sucked. I didn't do good. I didn't make good choices. I'm moving forward, but I'm not going to try to correct what already had happened, right? With cardio. Now, like I said previously, if you want to restrict slightly with your diet, you can in the form of fats, carbs. Keep your protein, vegetables, of course, because we don't want anybody to feel hunger, but do not try to do this cycle of overeat, then hours and hours of cardio, then overeat, hours of cardio. And the sad truth is, I don't think people realize how much cardio it takes to outdo what they ate, depending on how much over they ate, right? If it's like 200 calories, okay, you could probably correct that with some cardio. But when we're saying if you went over your treat meal, it's more of like a binge, right? We're not really talking about the people that like just like a little bit more, because you could totally fix that with cardio. But if you go over big time, I prefer to use those calories for lifting rather than cardio, because it's going to be so hard to counteract that. So at least put those calories to some good use. Get in a really good leg day, a back day, just kill it in the gym. You have all this extra energy, calories. So yeah, beast it.
Yeah, I think you did it. You said it very well there. And trying to outdo it is just that, it's just not the answer. Dieting hard for the next week and getting it, because I see people do that. They'll diet hard for the whole week after, and they just do like cardio it off. And I'm like, it's not really what you want to do. Just have one big spike meal of X calories that day. Maybe it was like 5,000 calories that day, and then think that, oh, this next week I'll just eat 1,000 calories and do an hour cardio. It doesn't create good. It's not great for you for your settings too. When we talk about like setting up your settings in the off season, we talk about getting your calories as high as we can while you're still not gaining body fat, getting your cardio as low as you can while you're still not gaining body fat, so we can kind of have those settings as a starting point going into the season. And if you're just cardioing off things, you're not really adjusting your settings much. You're just increasing your cardio settings. Your body is dieting for another 7 days when we don't want to be dieting that during the off season. So our settings aren't where they need to be. So we want to, create a good environment for you to start a prep. So you having like a big meal and then dieting it off doing cardio multiple times is not going to be good for that starting point. And that's why people a lot of times will get stuck in their diet too, or stuck when they're starting their prep. Like, well, how long were you actually, in a place where you were eating high calories, where your cardio was low? And you're like, well, not too often, because I was constantly, having a big meal and then dieting it off. And then I'd eat and I'd gain, 10 pounds in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And then I started dieting for 6 more weeks. And then now I want to start a prep, and I haven't been dieting. Basically, I've always been dieting, in some way or the other, 70% of the year. Like, of course, you're not going to have the best results. Your body's already used to dieting. You've been dieting this whole time. So we have to get you out of that cycle of, gain and then cut, gain and then cut. And I think that's one of the things that we always talk about, like that off season, is just, we want to keep you tight, but it's not just, we want to keep you tight for that reason. We want to keep you tight so your future preps are a lot easier. You're starting from a good starting point. Your body isn't over dieted. Your hormones are at optimal production, so that's why we do these things. So if you have those big binges, like she said, you just kind of move on, just start your diet fresh as you normally would the next day. Just go right back to your plan as a normal day. Don't panic and say, oh, I'm going to do a bunch of cardio, whatnot. Just go back to your plan. Worst case scenario, let's say you really went after it, really, really going crazy. Like you went crazy like I did that first one. And, that was probably, let's say, a pound worth of calories. It was probably like 3,500 calories worth of calories. That's fine. It's 1 pound. Who cares? Move on. Yeah, I was bloated, whatever. It looked like I lost my abs completely, but it was really, in the end of things, it was like 1 pound of body fat probably. And that's if it was in excess of what I was burning that day too. Yes. So it's pretty hard to actually eat that much. And worst case scenario, let's say you went really crazy for 2 days, 2 pounds. Like we don't need to diet super hard when we look at it that way. It's like, okay, I gained 2 pounds. I'm going to still go back to my diet, and then I'll lose those 2 pounds later when I'm, starting prep, or maybe I'll start another week earlier before prep to get those 2 pounds off me, whatever. Right. But it's not something that we just keep going and going and going where we're always dieting. So
yeah, exactly. And it can definitely play with your mind big time though. And I think there's this, if it's an event, a celebration, or even if it's like a after show treat meal, there's this sense that we have to maybe make the most of our one meal that we had, because who knows when we'll get it again. And I think that's where also sometimes people that feel like this is their only time to be able to eat this, that's when they go overboard. But I think, as you already alluded to, one bad meal or even bad day might not make a huge difference in your physique long term. You're going to see that almost instant, like water retention the next morning after you had some foods you haven't had, and a lot of sodium and sugar or whatnot. But don't let one bad meal turn into a bad day that turns into a bad week that turns into a bad month, because at some point it's going to be really hard to dig yourself out of that, right? It's going to be really hard. You can probably catch yourself, at maybe a week of bad eating, and even then, but the more you let it kind of snowball is when you're going the harder it is to get back. So just have realistic expectations when it comes with that. You are going to get a little bit softer for sure after you end your season, and after the show, after the show's over and you have your cheat meal, you're going to get a little softer anyway, right? As you enter in the off season, that one meal isn't going to do everything, or it's not going to do all that damage, but don't let it snowball, right? And also on the opposite side of things, sometimes people get a little too confident too. If they, let's say they're allowed a cheat meal and their coach allows them, okay, you can have whatever you want to eat for Saturday or whatever. Maybe they have something additional to their meal and they go overboard, and maybe they don't even notice like the next day. Oh, I look great today. The next day, maybe even the following. But what happens is sometimes it takes a while for that weight to accumulate and to be visible. So sometimes people get overly confident and then they'll start to like sneak it like, oh, well, coach said I could have a cheat meal and I had it and I'm the same weight. I look the same. So let me have one again. He didn't say I could have one, but I looked great last time. So let me try it again. So then they do it a few days later and it's going to start to then accumulate. So just be careful because it does take time for actual fat to accumulate, whereas water retention is instant. So just be aware of both of those things.
Yeah. And we got a question I wanted to get to a while. If you guys have questions, throw them in. Happy to answer them. This is Dana. Dana Onaga, she's an IFBB pro. Hey, Dana. And her question was, when we're talking about the hydration, was does other liquid besides flavored water count? So as basically the 1 ounce per pound that we're trying to hit per day. So any water that is not caffeinated, we count it. So there you go. Because the reason we don't count caffeinated water is because caffeine does act as a natural diuretic. So we just kind of count those liquids as no liquid when we drink caffeinated water. That's kind of like the rule of thumb. I think that's a little off. Personally, I don't think that if you take in 50 milligrams in a cup of coffee, you're losing all that water. But hey, who knows? I
bet you it might, like, let's say something was a 20 ounce something and it was caffeinated. Maybe you get 75% of that actual hydration, only 25%. So
yeah, it's probably super
low.
Low.
Math. Yeah. Just err on the side of more liquids.
Yeah, we just say, just don't count anything caffeinated and everything else count, because
no beer.
Yeah, no beer.
No,
I guess besides alcohol and because alcohol is similar, right? It has some dehydration effect. So so there you go on the liquids. But the Mio counts. Mio water flavoring counts. Mm-hmm. If without that, I'd be zero hydration without like water flavoring. Yeah. I'm so bad about it. I don't know. I'm so first world that I'm like, oh, water plain. Ew. It's like the only thing I need for survival, right? I'm like, oh, so that's like being like so snobby. Like my air, I don't like this air. Like I want better air. All right. So what else should we go into with this one?
I think it's also important to reflect after you binged. Why did this happen? And this is going to, you might have to sit down a bit and be like, well, is it the emotions? Is it just the restriction? Is it lack of variety in my diet? Something caused you to do this. It could even just be that you're not motivated enough. You just don't care enough. That could be it too. But there is a reason this happened. So take a look at yourself and be like, all right, I'm being honest. Why was I feeling like I had to overdo it today? Why did this happen? What can I do in the future to prevent this? And just be aware of it so that it might, prevent another disaster from happening again.
Yeah. And I think how you're talking too, just be real with yourself on what is realistic for you. Can you stick to a strict meal plan, right? Is that not your thing? Can you not? Maybe you want to do it. Maybe you Want to do it the Ashley way where she only eats chicken and veg,
Don't say that. Because people take so literally.
Yeah.
I don't. I snack around.
Okay. So okay. So maybe you, but maybe you're not that person, maybe you see your friends that are hardcore and they're tilapia and asparagus and you're like, I'm going to be hardcore too. And you're going to do that. But maybe that's not realistic for you long-term and you need to face that reality, when I was competing and I was super in the zone, I really didn't care. But now and I still take fitness serious. There'd be no way I would do just that. There's no possible way. So maybe you're somewhere in between those, and you have to be realistic. And maybe you have been, and you're like trying to convince yourself, oh no, I can be that super hardcore tilapia and asparagus person, even though there's no benefit to being just a tilapia and asparagus person. And you keep having that binge, like you keep doing it. Well, maybe you should loosen up on the diet, on the foods that you're eating, and you're going to have more success with that. Because we always say that a good diet is one you can follow. Right?
I was going to say that too.
Yeah.
That could be one of the reasons you're having issues with this. Maybe it's a wrong diet for you, doesn't fit your lifestyle. And, even I would say it's always better to take a longer time prepping. And maybe you don't have to cut the calories as drastically rather than trying to rush into something. I feel like this happens when we see those girls that are not 12 weeks out trying to do a show 12 weeks out. And then you have to cut their calories very drastically. And then they're doing all this stuff. So it's just be prepared that this might happen at some point and prevent it as much as you possibly can.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like, what are the diet options for you? Maybe just talk to your coach about what are my diet options. I have some clients that have to be hardcore because they're actually like the opposite. Some clients I have, I'll say, hey, let's give you a free meal every week. And they're like, no, I don't want to do a free meal. I'd rather just have more calories on my day because when I do a free meal, I go overboard.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And so you really do have to find what's right for the people. And sometimes I'll have a client that just keeps going overboard. And I'm like, well, let's not stick to a menu plan. Let's do a macro diet for you. That's fine. And nothing wrong with that, especially in the off season to do just macro based, right? Or maybe some people want to be real clean and then have X amount of calories to use throughout the week. So we got to find what's right for you. But if you're binging every, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, the diet you're on is probably causing or contributing to that binge. It might not just be the low calories in general. It might be just, you're just missing all these foods. So if you can be macro diet, maybe the macro dieting is, 10% off, but you're 100% on the diet and you're 10% off. And usually you're 100% on the diet, but then you're 1,000% off 2 days a month, right? It makes more sense to just be a little bit off every day than it is to be way off, a couple times a month. So you got to find what works for you, what's realistic for you. And that could be, really part of the problem. And maybe it isn't, maybe it's just not the right time for you to diet, period. I had a client recently who that was the case. She was trying to diet, wasn't sticking to it. Then we had this, I had the talk basically, hey, is this even the right thing for you right now? Are you, you're just not motivated to be this low in calories for what your goals are? And she was like, yeah, I'm just not sticking to it. I'm just not motivated enough to be leaner. I'm like, well, that's cool. Let's go into a gaining phase. You've been trying to diet for a little while, haven't been successful because you haven't been sticking to the diet. Let's go into a lean gaining phase. As soon as we went to lean gaining phase, she's been on the diet 100%. What's even crazier is that she even started leaning out a few weeks in, and we just keep raising calories. So we raised the calories, she leaned out a little bit, raised the calories, she leaned out a little bit. And we're just, we're finding that happy place for her. So for her, it looks like, her body was really fighting her on this diet, and it was just sick of being in a diet for a little while and just wanted to eat a little bit. Started eating, everything just turned right up, So sometimes you got to listen to the cues, maybe there's a reason that you're not sticking to the diet right now. Mm-hmm. For her, that was a perfect example. So that was a great example to use. It's rare, but it does happen. So, find the right time for you too, and be realistic with things. Don't force anything that's not working for you right now,
Yes. And if you're already having these thoughts of binging or feelings of binging, and it's already week 2 of your prep, it is not. This is something that would happen more so closer to a show or deep in prep, not when you first start it. So if this is already happening, you need to rethink some things, I think, or find some additional help outside of your coach or whatnot when it comes to eating patterns. Shout out to Celeste.
I was going to say that too. Good time,
yes. She handles all of the athletes that have these issues. So very trusted source in the industry.
Yeah. Celestial.fit, I believe, is the
Celestial.
.fit is her website. I think
Okay.
celestial.fit. Yeah, Celeste Chirk Rains. Yeah,
is her full name.
Yeah. So she's been on the podcast a few times, but so great source. I've actually quite a few girls go to her just for the mindset and of even if they don't have issues, just for mindset stuff. And she's actually going to be coming out here in March for our athletes too. So we're going to have her booked out to help with the athletes. And if you're one of our athletes, you're welcome to come to that. We'll be posting more information on that soon to do like a little camp for our bikini athletes in March timeframe. So anyway, with that, I'm trying to think of anything else that maybe missed there, but no, I think we got a lot of that stuff covered. So anything else you wanted to add to this?
Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Yeah, I guess that was it. Well, thank you guys so much. We appreciate it. Any tips you can leave it in the comments for others. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments as well, because we're going to be doing a Q&A episode here soon, and we need some good questions. So, actually, we had one question. We'll finish with it. I haven't read it. Actually, let me read it first. Okay, here's a decent question. It says, what do you do with your calories if you get injured in bodybuilding season and can't lift legs for a few weeks? Be as active as you can as you normally are. So yeah, if you have an injury, and this is actually pretty common where you can't lift for a while, whether you're having like a surgery or you get injured, in a scenario where it's legs, it's going to be a little bit easier because you can still work out your upper body 4 days a week. Maybe you really focus on your shoulders and your lats during this time because you have more time to work out. So in that scenario, maybe you could just increase the amount of upper body frequency that you normally would, and you call this month. Like there's some people that will go through, periods of, let's say 12 weeks, 16 weeks of intense focus on certain area. Guys do this a lot more than you do in bikini. Bikini, it's kind of focused on glutes, hamstrings, shoulders, lats all the time. But guys, they have extra muscle groups that they have to be bigger. Arms, for example, chest, for example, right? It has to be bigger. Back, for example, that you don't really have to overly focus on in bikini. So they'll have maybe 2 months where they focus just on back as like their priority muscle group and do it like every other day for 2 months, chest every other day for 2 months, that type of thing. Well, you have an opportunity here with your legs being injured to focus more on your shoulders, your lats. And maybe if you're one of those people that need arms in bikini, maybe your arms, and you just kind of hit that rotation. So maybe you don't miss much gym at all for you. Maybe you just increase the rotation of your upper body and you don't miss much gym at all. But if you do miss a gym, then, typically reduce the calories, the amount of calories you'd burn in the gym and in recovery, which is not going to be much. It's going to be, with recovery, probably 400 calories on a leg day would be like a common amount for a smaller bikini competitor, maybe 200 calories, 250 in the gym, 150 extra with recovery. So you're at 400 calories or so for that workout. You just take your calories down 400, generally from the carbs and the fats of that day. Usually you'll get it from the post-workout and workout nutrition anyway. So it wouldn't be that big of a drop. So anyway, I guess with that is it. Thank you guys so much. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. Talk to you soon.